So good morning, listeners, and welcome to Come and See Inspirations, being produced here in our Come and See studio here in Arda, and this, the 19th of April. It's the second Sunday in Easter, otherwise known as Divine Mercy Sunday. So good morning, listeners, and welcome again to another edition of Come and See Inspirations. My name is John Keeley, and joining me and helping me out and trying to guide me as best he can with the programme, Shane Abrams. Good morning to you, Shane.
Good morning, John. How are we keeping?
I'm good. I can't complain now. Thanks be to God. And in these trying days and so on and so forth, we thank God for the ability to be able to join each other this morning for another edition of Come and See Inspirations, being broadcast here in Sacred Space. We want to welcome, as usual, our listeners, especially those who are housebound, lonely and struggling these days in some way. Over the years, we've often mentioned housebound and lonely and struggling people, but especially these days because of this COVID-19. You are in our prayers, and we thank you indeed for your support. So our programme is broadcast on Sacred Space at West Limerick 102 local radio at 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. each Sunday, and is available for playback and download and Come and See Inspirations at buzzsprout.com. Also, if you Google, if you Google Come and See Inspirations, you'll find us there. Also available on Spotify and iTunes. Now, during this current restrictions, where we're not able to attend Sunday Mass in our local churches, we are grateful and thankful to West Limerick 102 local radio and also to Father Tony Mullins in Abbeyfield and the parishioners in Abbeyfield Church for allowing us to broadcast live at 10 a.m. Mass each Sunday here on Sacred Space. Father Tony and his parishioners have graciously agreed to change the 9:15 a.m. Mass to 10 a.m. to facilitate us. And this, of course, is for those of our listeners who don't have access to internet and would like somehow to be connected with Sunday Mass. So we thank again Father Tony Mullins for that. So we'll continue that for the foreseeable future.
Just on that, John,
Mm-hmm.
just to say to people, we're not quite sure, but the 10 o'clock Mass in Abbeyfield is very popular in West Limerick. I think it's mainly because it's one of the few parishes that has a live stream.
Mm-hmm.
So for people that are listening and watching it on the internet, it's just to be careful of it, the fact there's a huge demand for that 10 o'clock Mass, and sometimes it's too much pressure for the computer hardware that's keeping everything going. So just to bear that in mind, if you're watching, don't keep hitting refresh because it clogs up the whole system. And they're working on trying to make sure that there's enough space for people to be able to watch it when the live stream is on Sunday morning. Now, as John said, the 10 o'clock Mass is broadcast here on the radio as well. It's on the live stream. But John, don't they have a 12 o'clock Mass as well?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. But we thank Father Tony for that. And just on what Shane has just mentioned there, for the first few weeks when we were broadcasting Mass from Abbeyfield, we did, in fact, we found problems ourselves. But Father Tony, I know, told me that he had engineers in during the week. They've identified a slight little problem there, so things should improve. The sound last week, I thought the sound last Sunday was exceptional. So again, we thank Father Tony for that. And just to let listeners know, Mass is available at 10 a.m. from Abbeyfield, and it's broadcast here in West Limerick 102. If people don't know in your local area, you might let them know they might want to tune in. The program, our normal program that we still continue to record, is also broadcast at 11 p.m. a normal 11 p.m. slot on Sunday night. So 10 a.m. Mass is Sunday, 11 p.m. is our normal program. Again, we'd like people to contact us with maybe some inspirational thoughts you've got in terms of programming here on Sacred Space. Text us 087 6088 667 or SacredSpace102 @gmail.com. I'll just give you that text again, 087 6088 667. Just want to remind listeners again, we're thankful to West Limerick 102 for allowing us to broadcast the Rosary each weekday, Monday to Friday, just after the 1 p.m. news on West Limerick 102. That's Monday to Friday, about 1:05, the Rosary by Dana and Father Kevin Scanlon, and that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We hope to continue that for the times of the restrictions for the COVID-19. I think that's about all the little bits and pieces I got to share, Shane. I don't know, what do you want to share yourself?
It's just encourage people as well, just to look around. If you're lucky enough that you have internet access, churchservices.tv is the website, and in Limerick, so the churches that live stream is St. John's Cathedral, the Redemptorists, the Augustinians, Raheen Parish, Abbeyfield, and I'm missing two, John, Glenstall, and there's another one. I'll think of it again. So just to look around, but it's interesting. It's just interesting the amount of places that are actually streaming online. If you look, there's masses during the day. There's rosary. There's adoration. There is liturgy of the hours, morning and evening prayers. Now, the one thing I would say to people is, if you have somebody that is cocooning in particular and might not have internet access, maybe to think about ways we're observing social protocols and all the rest of it, that maybe to give them internet access, we're using a tablet or a laptop or whichever, if you haven't had a chance to do it so already. Now, in terms of the calendar, John, where do we stand this week? Now, it's hard to believe it's 12 months actually since the fire at Notre Dame.
Wow.
Yes, well, I was the same during the week. My God, where did that 12 months go? Last weekend as well, I thought it was very interesting. We had history in the sense that Queen Elizabeth II gave a lovely Easter message. It was the first time she's ever given an Easter message. And I thought it was very interesting. Of course, her message sometimes at Christmas is kind of very generic and very, 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 happy Christmas is about as Christian as it gets. But of course, you also have to remember Queen Elizabeth is also the head of the Church of England, and I thought her message on Easter was very strong from that point of view of setting out what Easter was about and the fact that it wasn't shut down just because of COVID. So if anyone can get to see that, it's only about 2 or 3 minutes.
That's all.
It's well worth to listen. Obviously, of course, Pope Francis last weekend, the Urbi et Orbi from St. Peter's, and the Mass from the altar of the chair. So just interesting times. Now, on the calendar, today, as John said, is the 19th of April. It is the second Sunday of Easter. It used to be known in the old calendar, the 1962 calendar, as Low Sunday, as opposed to the High Sunday, which was Easter Sunday itself. In the Novus Ordo calendar, that's the current calendar that we use. It's the Sunday dedicated to Divine Mercy, following the revelations to Sister Faustina. And of course, the 3 o'clock devotions will be happening today. People are encouraged to participate, obviously, remotely in the 3 o'clock devotions. It's for those praying the Psalter. We're on week 2. And of course, today is obviously the last day of the Easter octave. We'll talk about that in the Gospel. I'll do that afterwards. So Monday, the 20th of April, is the feast day of I picked out a blessed James Bell. English saint, one of the martyrs of Oxford University, was hanged in 1584. Educated at Oxford, he eventually conformed to the Elizabethan settlement and served as a minister in the Church of England until he was reprimanded by a Catholic woman for abandoning his vows. He returned to his Catholic faith, and then he spent 2 years ministering to impoverished covert Catholics in England, and he was hanged in 1584. The 21st of April is the feast day of St. Anselm. Anselm is one of the great doctors and bishops of the church. He's an Italian saint, but is associated with Canterbury in England. He was born in Lombardy, joined the monastic school at Bec in Normandy in 1059, and he succeeded. He became the Archbishop of Canterbury. He was exiled twice, and he died in 1109. Now, the man is very well renowned in theological circles from a historical point of view, because he defined theology as faith seeking understanding and understanding seeking faith. Then on Wednesday, we have the feast day of St. Abel Macaw. Now, as far as what I can tell, which isn't a whole lot, she's a holy Irish woman and no other information is available. And her feast day is the 22nd of April. So that's what we have on that. Then on Thursday, the 22nd, now we've two ones here, John. The first one, I suppose, is we should wish a happy feast day to people in England, not not the United Kingdom, not Great Britain, in England, because it is the feast day of St. George, who is, of course, the patron saint of England. George is venerated as a soldier saint in the Holy Land, where he was probably martyred around the year 300. Now, it's an interesting one. He is also the patron saint of quite a number of other countries, including Georgia in Russia. He's very popular amongst the Orthodox Church. When I lived in Lebanon, many churches were either dedicated to St. George or dedicated to St. James. And the icon of him killing the dragon is in many homes. Then on Friday, the 24th of April, we have the feast day of St. Fidelius of Sigmaringen. He's a Capuchin who went to preach the Calvinists in Switzerland, and he was killed by a group of extremists in 1622. And then finally, John, on next Saturday is the feast day of St. Mark the Evangelist. Of course, Mark is very much associated with, obviously, the Gospel of St. Mark. Generally, by tradition, is said to have been the first Gospel written. By tradition, very much associated with the preaching of St. Peter, Paul, and Barnabas. His Gospel was probably written in Rome when he was with Paul, and it's generally seen, as I said, as representing St. Peter's approach to the preaching of the good news. And his symbol, of course, is the lion, and he's very much associated with the city of Venice because, of course, that is one of the cities that has him as his patron. Now, John, a new thing we're going to do with the saints, and I won't do it for every week, but just now and again, is to talk about food associated with the saints.
Okay.
So this week, now the only reason I'm bringing this up is I was given a gift of a recipe book, and it's called Saintly Feasts. So that's why I'm bringing this one up.
Okay.
So one of the saints mentioned is actually Saint Mark. And it's associated with him is spiced stuffed pumpkin. Now, I have to say it's an interesting one. However, the good text does not give me an explanation as to why stuffed pumpkin is associated with St. Mark, but the recipe looks quite nice. You get a pumpkin, and it's stuffed with peppers, mozzarella, ginger, garlic, and various different herbs and spices. I have to say, it sounds really nice. But anyway, so we might try that and see how it goes. So, John, that's what we have in terms of our celestial guides this week.
Okay, Shane, thank you very much for that. So, at this point of the programme, we might have our spiritual communion prayer. And that, as we know, as we always have done here in the programme, is for those who can't receive Jesus in the most blessed sacrament this morning, which really is effectively us all. So this is the spiritual communion prayer. My Jesus, I desire to receive you into my soul. Since I cannot now receive you sacramentally, come spiritually into my soul. I embrace you as already there. I unite myself wholly to you. Never permit me to be separated from you. Amen. So now it's time to go for our first bit of music. The first bit of music we're going to play this morning is something that actually I was pleasantly, it was pleasantly suggested to me that maybe we should play this piece of music to end part one of the programme. This is by Dolly Parton, and this one is entitled, He's Alive. So let's hear it.
The gates and doors were barred and all the windows fastened down. I spent the night in sleeplessness and rose at every sound. Half in hopeless sorrow and half in fear the day would find the soldiers breaking through to drag us all away. And just before the sunrise, I heard something at the wall. The gate began to rattle, and a voice began to call. So I hurried to the window, looked down into the streets, expecting swords and torches, and the sound of soldiers' feet. But there was no one there but Mary, so I went down to let her in. John stood there beside me as she told me where she'd been. She said they'd moved him in the night and none of us knows where. The stone's been rolled away and now his body isn't there. So we both ran toward the garden and John ran on ahead. We found the stone and empty tomb just the way that Mary said. But the winding sheet they wrapped him in was just an empty shell. And how or where they'd taken him was more than I could tell. Oh, but something strange had happened there, just what I did not know. John believed a miracle but I just turned to go. Circumstance and speculation couldn't lift me very high, 'cause I'd seen them crucify him, and I saw him die. Back inside the house again, the guilt and anguish came, and everything I'd promised him just added to my shame. When at last it came to choices, I denied I knew his name. And even if he was alive, it wouldn't be the same. Then suddenly the air was filled with a strange and sweet perfume. The light that came from everywhere drove shadows from the room. And Jesus stood before me with his arms held open wide. Then I fell down on my knees and I just clung to him and cried. Then he raised me to my feet, and as I looked into his eyes, the love was shining out from him like sunlight from the skies. Guilt and my confusion disappeared in sweet release, and every fear I'd ever had just melted into peace.
And welcome back, listeners. My name is Shane Ambrose. Welcome back to Sacred Space, a Come and See Inspirations production here on West Limerick 102. And this morning we are delighted to welcome to the programme Jane Mellet. Good morning, Jane.
Good morning, Shane. How are you?
I'm not too bad at all. Now, Jane, you are the Laudato Si officer with Trócaire, I understand.
I am indeed.
Now, we're going to unpackage that a small bit for people and kind of explain where we're going with this. So, a couple of years ago, Pope Francis published, I think was it an apostolic exhortation or an encyclical called Laudato Si. And this year, as observant listeners would have noticed, Bishop Brendan Leahy also wrote the Lintern Pastoral for the Limerick Diocese on the whole, on the papal letter. Now, it's 5 years, and we're coming up, I understand, Jane, to a particular special week in May. So that's one of the reasons why we're covering Laudato Si on the programme this morning. But before we start, I suppose a small bit about yourself. What do you do? What are you involved with? What's your background? Just to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. So, well, for the last number of years, I've worked with Dublin Archdiocese as a parish pastoral worker, and found myself heading up the project for the World Meeting of Families, which was promoting Laudato Si. So the project was called Our Common Home. And that has sort of led me down this Laudato Si road and becoming more fully immersed in the document, and has led me into Trócaire. And my role is really to promote the document in faith communities across Ireland, and trying to motivate and mobilize church into taking action on the environment as a result. So it's been quite an interesting journey.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Just in terms of, I suppose, people will say, well, why are we looking at it now, and why are we bringing it up now? And when you and I were talking during the week about preparing for the interview, one of the things I was saying was, at the moment, with the whole COVID thing that's going on, people have time, I suppose, just to pause and catch their breaths. We're not rushing around. We're not doing a whole lot at the moment. And I suppose it's also an opportunity for us just to think about the way we live our lives and how we live our lives, and everything that revolves around that. Because, of course, when we come back after COVID, when we start to, I suppose, move out of the restrictions, it's going to be a very different kind of normal for us. But as well as that, one of the main reasons why we wanted to talk about it, of course, was some of those amazing pictures from around the world of the impact of the shutdowns.
Absolutely. And I was just looking at some of the images there this morning, where you have, cities and their pollution levels, so that they're showing images side by side of cities a few months ago compared to right now. Cities like New Delhi, Bangkok, and the difference in the air quality is enormous. And I suppose people are even commenting on how even in Ireland they can hear the bird song seems louder, or they're noticing the flowers more. It's so quiet everywhere, and things have really slowed down for everybody. And I think after the initial shock of the shutdown, we seem to have entered into this national retreat almost. So people are certainly aware of that and becoming more aware of cleaner air, of slower pace of life, and so on. So I think we're being given a sort of a snapshot of what's possible. Like there's that famous phrase from the author Arundhati Roy that came to mind when I saw those images from the cities, and she says in it, "Another world is possible, and on a quiet day I can hear her breathing." And it's a beautiful phrase. But I think we're really being shown, what the world would look like if we just went that bit slower, if we were just more conscious of our environment and really working together for a cleaner and more sustainable world. It's quite an interesting time.
Now, I suppose people will be aware very much there was the whole extinction campaigns that were going on before the shutdown happened. But what people might not be aware of, and I suppose that's what we keep talking about. We keep referring to this thing called Laudato Si. What is Laudato Si?
So Laudato Si is a letter. It's an encyclical written by the Pope to every single person every single person living on this planet. So papal encyclicals are usually written to Catholics worldwide on some aspect of church teaching or church doctrine. This particular letter, Laudato Si, on care for our common home, is its full title, is written to everybody because Pope Francis says we need a conversation that includes everyone, a dialogue on what is happening to our world and what we need to do about it. The phrase Laudato Si is actually taken from a prayer from St. Francis, the opening words of a prayer, Laudato Si mi Signor, which means praise be to you, my Lord. So it's that famous prayer from St. Francis. And so Laudato Si literally means praise be, but it's an urgent call for everyone to take action on the environmental crisis.
And I suppose one of the questions would be where, it's some people would say, well, that's a political issue, or that's an economic issue, or like how is it? Why is the Pope getting bothered about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suppose it's a piece of good news where we now have faith communities entering into this debate, and Pope Francis in the document describes the roots of the environmental crisis as deeply spiritual. He says we all need to look into our own hearts where our relationship with the natural world is concerned. So that's the first thing. He's describing the roots of the crisis as a spiritual crisis, that we've forgotten who we are, where we're from. We need to get back to our roots. And I suppose in the document as well, he also talks about the responsibility we have to care for God's creation, that our theology in the past may have been interpreted as us having complete control over nature, that we can do what we want with it. And I suppose he's trying to redefine that and say, no, we are carers of creation. We are there to till the land, but also to protect it. We are custodians of the earth for future generations. So he's coming at this from a scriptural point of view and from a deeply spiritual point of view as well, to bring faith into the conversation. And members of the scientific community have also said this, that when we're talking about people having a conversion or a change of heart where their relationship with nature is concerned, they say we need theology and spirituality to have the conversation in those camps. Not, they say we can't do that. So it's an interesting. It's just an interesting aspect of the debate, the call for faith communities to inspire people and to move people into action, I guess.
I suppose we're looking at it 5 years down the line. As you said, it was this letter was published in 2015. What's changed? What's gone on? What has actually happened since the Pope published that letter?
Yeah, well, I suppose a lot has happened internationally and a lot has happened in Ireland as well. And just to touch on the global picture, first of all, I think across the global church, there have been many organizations that have been set up to promote Laudato Si. I suppose one of the biggest contributions is this acknowledgement of the church teaching on the environment now becoming part of that body of teaching on social justice in the church, that it's been given its place in the church's social teaching. And one example of an organization that has come out of this internationally is the Global Catholic Climate Movement. And just a piece of really good news on their work. Part of their work is to encourage Catholic institutions around the world to divest from the fossil fuel industry, so to take their investments away from the fossil fuel industry, which is driving aspects of this crisis. And Catholic groups make up one of the largest groups globally that are part of this divestment campaign. So it's a piece of good news, and the Irish Bishops' Conference are included in that divestment piece, as well as are many congregations from Ireland also. So that's kind of just one very practical example of a piece of activism that's happening and that we can be proud of. To go more locally, I think Laudato Si is being taught in schools, in parishes, in universities, and some parishes are doing amazing things around the country, becoming eco parishes, and really looking at how they can be more sustainable in terms of things like their energy and their recycling, but also bringing care for creation more prominently into their prayer and liturgy within the parish as well, being an example and a witness to the community. So I suppose the care for creation theme has really blossomed since Laudato Si has been published, and it's still very much in its early stages. It's only 5 years since its publication, but there is so many good news stories and projects happening around the place to take example from as well. So yeah, lots of positivity. And I mean, in my work, I meet groups all around the country who are doing inspiring things on this issue as well. So just to listen and to learn from those groups is part of the work.
And in terms of things that people are doing around the country, like I suppose when people think about this topic, there's very much, you can get slightly overwhelmed by it all, and you're kind of going, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. And it seems to be such a bigger issue. So I suppose if you were looked at it from the point of view of practical action, like where if a person listening this morning, just going back to that quote from Pope Francis, says like interdependence obliges to think of one world with a common plan, and to kind of to look at the mindsets that we have in terms of making decisions about how we live our lives. I suppose what would be a couple of examples that maybe we could do at the personal level, at maybe the family level, and maybe consider at the parish level, in terms of, because of course the thing about it is we're parts of wider circles. And looking at it from a faith perspective, you know, we have ourselves, we have our families, and obviously we have parishes as well. And sometimes people mightn't think of that one, actually, the parish one, but we'll get to that in a second. So if we can start with the individual and the family, what kind of suggestions or actions have people been taking kind of to read, reflect, and implement on what Pope Francis has called us to do?
Yeah, sure. And you know, this issue is overwhelming, and to acknowledge that the hope part of this work is in action, and it's on coming together with like-minded people. And ultimately, I say to people, you know, we start with ourselves. We have to. We look at our own lives and our own homes, and down to very simple, practical things. People start with sorting out their recycling. And for some people, they might be starting on this journey right there, and that's absolutely fine. Because you start with the small things, with what you can do, where you are, and it grows from there. So that's a really practical area to start with in the home. Looking at our energy use in our homes, how we heat our homes, what bulbs we use, very simple things. Doing even a little energy audit of our house can also be a very practical thing to do. And another really I find this quite a powerful initiative, the Faith Pollinators Plan, which can be done in home and parish. And this is simply the planting of wildflowers for pollinators like bees, you know, a beautiful action to do with children, with families, and with parish groups. And even going on from there, the planting of native trees and so on. So there's lots of small initiatives that can be done. And on our Trócaire website, we have 100 ways to implement Laudato Si with very practical things in the resources section on the website as well. And then taken from there, I think this grows once you complete those tasks. You'll want to do more, because this is a journey. And looking at our transport, you know, how do I get to school? How do I get to work? Depending on where I live, can I use public transport more often? And I also say to families and parishes to write to your local TDs, write to your parish priest, like let them know you're concerned about this issue. Because we need both. We need the small actions, and we need our governments and church bodies as well to be aware that this is an issue that concerns us as Catholics, as citizens, and we want them to take the urgent action that is needed. So even as a family to sit down and to write something like that, or as a parish group, you're really taking on a piece of strong activism there, as well as getting involved in your practical tasks in the household. So I think that's quite a bit to get on with in the beginning, and it does grow from there. And I think speaking with like-minded people and other groups and other families who are doing similar things, and in the local community as well, really helps the momentum to keep going.
Now, one of the things that caught our eye on the program is the fact that there is actually a week coming up in May about Laudato Si's 5th anniversary.
Yep, absolutely. So this is called Laudato Si Week. It runs from the 16th of May to the 24th. And the 24th of May is the anniversary of the publication of Laudato Si. And this year we celebrate 5 years. And the difference this year is that Pope Francis he has renewed his call. He's renewed the urgent call for care for our common home. He says there is an urgent need to listen to the cry of the earth, to the cry of the poor. So he has asked for this week to be celebrated by Catholic communities around the world. And there's a website, laudatosiweek.org, where you can go on there and you can get lots of different ideas about what you might do as a family, as a parish, as a diocese. And there's a global map on that website, and they're asking people to write in their action, no matter how big or how small it is, so that it will be placed on the map of activities, and you can see examples that are already there. I suppose with the COVID-19 crisis, this week has changed. It was going to be a week where there would be a lot of international events, and we would certainly have done an event somewhere in the country as well. So that is all moving online now in light of the current crisis we are in. But still encourage people to engage with the week in whatever way they can. We'd love to hear your ideas as well. So if you are doing something in your house to mark Laudato Si week, no matter what it is, planting your bee bombs, planting a tree, having a little prayer service for creation, do register it on that global map, laudatosiweek.org, so that others can see what you're doing. And we'd love to see the Ireland part of that map full of dots as well. So unfortunately, we can't engage in it as we would have liked to, but it will still be marked, absolutely, and to encourage people to get involved in that.
So I'm just thinking, families that might be listening this morning, or grandparents that maybe want to encourage their kids and might have a bit of access to the old internet. Where give me, if you like, your top 4 resources where people can go online to get information.
Sure. So for this week in particular, I'd encourage you to look at laudatosiweek.org. And there's lots of ideas and resources on there for how you might celebrate this week. So that's definitely the first place. I'd also encourage you to look on the Trócaire websites. In parish resources on the website, they have a section on Laudato Si. And in the education section of the website, there's actually lots of activities for children of all ages in relation to Laudato Si and climate justice. So there's plenty of very accessible videos for all ages and worksheets and things like that. So, also if families are looking for activities for children to go there. Another place I'd encourage people to check out is the Global Catholic Climate Movement website. And this is an international website. It's an international organization inspired and founded as a result of Laudato Si. And on there, it's a minefield of information and resources, lots of prayerful resources, and also ideas around activism, and lots of news about how the church is responding to the environmental crisis.
So what was that one again? Sorry, what was the name of that website again?
So it's the Global Catholic Climate Movement. If you just Google that, it'll come up. The Global Catholic Climate Movement. And there's a lot to be getting on with between those 3 websites. And on that last website I mentioned, the Global Catholic Climate Movement, you can actually sign the Laudato Si pledge, and you get a newsletter from them and some handy tips and resources. And it's saying, I support Laudato Si. I want to take action on Laudato Si. So just to encourage people there as well. One other place I will send people, especially for the Irish context, is to Eco Congregation Ireland. Eco Congregation Ireland. This is an organisation which is encouraging parishes to become eco-parishes and apply for the Eco-Parish Awards. So you can actually do a range of activities. When we emerge from the COVID-19 crisis, that parishes can apply for this award, and they're given a list of tasks they have to achieve. It's a bit like the Gaisca Award.
Yeah. The green flags
and the green flags, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the green flag for parish, really. So in the meantime, people could go on there and just research what it's about and see what parishes have done. It's a really interesting piece of work. And again, starting small, it's nothing that's not achievable. And all you need is one other person who's passionate to join with you and watch how it grows from there. So if you delve into those 4 websites, you'll be kept very busy for a while.
That's for sure. Now, from a Limerick perspective, just to remind people as well that Bishop Brendan's Lenten Pastoral this year was also on Laudato Si, and it was called Listening to Nature's Words of Love, Caring for Our Common Home. And that's available on the diocesan website, and it also has some of those links listed as resources at the back of it. But I suppose as well as that, Jane, I suppose one thing maybe to say to people as well would be to actually read Laudato Si.
Absolutely. And And one of the interesting projects that emerged during this crisis is we did a bit of a Laudato Si book club online. And if anyone is interested in that, they can email me. I'll give you my email address at the end. But read Laudato Si. It's a beautiful document, and invite a couple of people to join you. We've done it as a kind of a book club for 6 weeks, taking a chapter per week. And it really does take you on a journey. And I think when Pope Francis, when he wrote this document, he brought together the world's top climate scientists, but also theologians, anthropologists, sociologists. So it's a fascinating journey through the climate crisis, the environmental crisis, but also a spiritual journey in terms of how we've ended up here and where we need to go. So I would really encourage people to read Laudato Si.
Okay, Jane, listen, thanks a million. I'm afraid the clock is against us against this morning. I get the distinct impression you could talk about this for a long time.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just to remind people again, those resources that Jane mentioned, so it's laudatosiweek.org. That's what the main website. And that week is the 16th to the 23rd of May. Then on the Trócaire website, under either parish resources or education resources, there's a lot of resources on the Trócaire website, folks, if you've never actually explored it, and particularly if for parents that have kids at home, just in terms of getting things involved like that, and also maybe looking towards the summer when school is out, but where we may still have some restrictions on us. Maybe we might be able to get back to full things. You're looking for things to do with the kids. Then there's the Global Catholic Climate Movement. So if you Google that, it's Global Catholic Climate Movement. A load of resources there. And then finally, if you want to set up the green flag for your parish, if you want to research it so you can come at the PP when all things are lifted again, that's Eco Congregation Ireland. That's Eco Congregation Ireland. So they're the four resources. Jane, we might have you back on again because as well as Laudato Si, we didn't get to discuss today the document on the Amazon, which I wanted to get you, but time is against us.
Sure.
And we'll get you back on again at some stage. Listen, thanks a million for coming on the program this morning.
You're very welcome, and thank you. Could I just leave you my email address if anyone wants to get in touch?
Sure.
Is jane.mellett, MELLETT, @trócaire.org, and happy to have a chat about all things Laudato Si if you want to get in touch.
Perfect. Thanks a million. Okay,
Thanks.
John, we'll go out with our next. We'll finish up this part 2 of the program with our next piece of music, which is
Morning Has Broken by Judy Collins.
Okay, perfect. And we'll come back to part 3 and when we will have our reflection on the Sunday Gospel. Talk to you then.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where his feet pass.
So welcome back again to the third part of Come and See Inspirations. My name is John Keeley, still joined by Shane Ambrose at the end of the Skype line. Part of the programme where we always read and reflect on the Word of God, the Sunday Gospel. So at this point you might pray the prayer before reading and reflecting on Scripture, please, Shane.
Lord, we thank you for putting us in the presence of your word, which you inspired in your prophets. May we approach this word reverently, attentively, and humbly. May we not despise this word, but receive all it has to say to us. We know that our hearts are closed, often incapable of comprehending the simplicity of your word. Send your Spirit to us so that receiving the word in truth and simplicity, our lives may be transformed by it. Let us not be resistant, Lord. May your word penetrate us like a two-edged sword. May our hearts be open to it. Let our eyes be closed nor our minds wander, but may we give ourselves entirely to this listening. We ask this, Father, in union with Mary, who used to recite the Psalms, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for that, Shane. So the Gospel for today is taken from the Gospel of John, chapter 20, verse 19 to 31. In the evening of that same day, the first day of the week, the doors were closed in the room where the disciples were, for fear of the Jews. Jesus came and stood among them. And he said to them, "Peace be with you," and showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were filled with joy when they saw the Lord, and he said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father sent me, so am I sending you." After saying this, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. For those whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven. And for those whose sins you retain, they are retained." Thomas, called the twin, who was one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. When the disciples said, "We've seen the Lord," he answered, "Unless I see the holes that the nails made in his hands, and can put my finger into the holes they made, and unless I can put my hand into his side, I refuse to believe." 8 days later, the disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. The doors were closed, but Jesus came in and stood among them. "Peace be with you," he said. Then he spoke to Thomas. "Put your finger here. Look, here are my hands. Give me your hand. Put it into my side. Doubt no longer, but believe." Thomas replied, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "You believe because you can see me. Happy are those who have not seen and yet believe." There are many other signs that Jesus worked and the disciples saw, but they're not recorded in this book. These are recorded so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing this you may have life through his name. So that's the Gospel for today, Shane, the second Sunday after Easter. Maybe a few thoughts, please?
Sure, John. One of the things, actually, I just wanted to say before starting on this morning's Gospel is just to remind people, we hear the Gospels spread out over Easter, but it's also to be very conscious of the timeline of things that's happening. So if you think about it, so Jesus rose on Easter Sunday morning. So then he appeared to the women that went to the tomb. Then he appeared to Mary Magdalene. Then you had the whole incident with James and John running to the tomb. Then Jesus appeared to the guys on the road to Emmaus. Then, while they were on the way back, we just had the account of where he appeared for the first time in the upper room. And then after that, then we know the week later, when Thomas was back in the room, he appeared again. So it's just to be very conscious of just all these things kind of happening on the one day, around the one time. We spread them out liturgically because they're spread out over different Sundays, but just to people keep that kind of in their heads, like this was all happening very fast. And I think we can kind of very much understand and very much place ourselves in that upper room at the moment. I think it's a very fortuitous gospel, maybe, we hear it at this time, because the line that struck me again and again when I was looking at this week was the doors were closed in the room where the disciples were. And I was kind of going, oh, wow, okay, that is so speaking to where we are at this moment in time. Now, obviously, at this stage, the disciples were afraid. They were afraid. The way John describes it, they were, for fear of the Jews, they were afraid they were going to be attacked. But down through the centuries, Christianity and people have been afraid for many different reasons. And look at us at the moment as a community. Well, we're not so much afraid. What we're doing is we're looking out for each other, but it means we're staying inside with locked doors, which can be hard. And I think for me this morning, John, the line that jumped out at me was that one: peace be with you. And I think this morning's gospel is that should be the line maybe that people need to hear this morning at the moment. It's a little scary out there at the minute. Let's be honest. There's the amount of people, the tested cases that have been tested and the numbers that have died is going up. In Ireland, it's not too bad, but if we look around the world, the United States of America is absolutely terrifying at the moment. But what does the gospel say to you this morning? What is the word that echoes down 2,000 years of history for you to hear today? And it is Jesus said to them, "Peace be with you," and showed them his hands and his side. So the disciples were filled with joy when they saw the Lord, and he said to them again, "Peace be with you." I think, it's something that we need to really think about and reflect on this morning, because that peace, we need to be open to receiving that peace as well. It's not just that we need to seek it and to seek for that reassurance from God in moments, and it's, in moments of darkness, in moments of lack of hope. We need to listen to what Jesus is saying to us. And one thing we often said on the radio program is the Gospels were not written just 2,000 years ago. They speak to us now in the present day as much as they did when they were originally written. And it's interesting. I like Thomas. Not many people do, but I like Thomas because Thomas is a modern man. And you know why? Because he's looking for what he wants to see in front of him. I'd say Thomas and Richard Dawkins would get on well, in the sense that, the people that turn around and try to say that, well, you have to prove the existence of God. You have to be rational about things. There's nothing rational about faith in one sense. You cannot define faith in the sense of the modern scientific method. You cannot define God and prove that he exists scientifically, because you cannot define him for the modern scientific method. You can't define God because God is the creator of all things. So how can something that's created prove the creation of the creator? And it's something that, and that's one of the reasons why I like Thomas. He's a saint who expresses the doubts that we all have. Like, could you imagine you were out and you come back and the lads are sitting around and they're having a pint, right? And they turn around and they say to you, "We saw the boss." And you're kind of going, "Here now, lads, we buried him 3 days ago. What are you talking about?" And they'll tell you, "We saw him. We saw the marks on his body. He was, as sure as you're standing there, he was standing in front of us." Wouldn't you be like Thomas? And sometimes we call him Doubting Thomas, and sometimes that's almost an insult, if you like. And I'm kind of thinking, well, no, actually, it's okay to have doubts. It's okay to have questions. One of the saints that we're going to be celebrating next week is Saint Anselm. And as I said, the first part of the program, he's famous for having defined theology as faith seeking understanding and understanding seeking faith. Never be afraid of the doubts that you have. Never seek to brush them under the carpet. Embrace them. Question them. We're given our reason. We're given our intellect. That's a gift from God. That's there for a reason. But we're also given the gift of faith. And on this Easter Sunday, this low Sunday, it's Easter Sunday because we're still in the octave, listen to what Jesus is saying to you. Peace be with you.
Thanks for that, Shane. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, just a final word. I know we're right up against the time, but my own little thought on that. Our friend Thomas again. Thomas wanted to know if it was the real Jesus. This is the thought that came to me. He wanted to see the wounds in the hands and side of Jesus. This would convince Thomas that this was the real Jesus. We could ask ourselves today, is the real Jesus, is the Jesus we follow the real Jesus? Do we get to know Jesus through maybe his word in the Gospels? Do we meet him in other people? Is the Jesus we know alive, the real Jesus? Does the Jesus I follow encourage me, give me hope, give me peace? Or is the Jesus I follow, does he fill me with fear and uncertainty and no hope and so on and so forth? Today, maybe let's leave this program today with a thought. that we want to follow the real Jesus, the Jesus who is fully alive, and as Shane said, gives us peace and gives us hope and gives us love. So with that, we better go for our final piece of music. What else would we do? Limerick Gospel Choir. Oh, happy day. So until next week, for myself and Shane, God bless you all now. Bye.
Bye.
I went way up.